and this is an economic worker placement game where players are going to be recruiting different inventors in order to gain the skills that they need to create different inventions and contribute back to society, because the player who's able to contribute the most to society is going to be the player that wins the game. And the way this game works is that it uses a main board as well as individual player boards, and it plays over a series of 4 rounds, each with 2 phases, with the first phase being the upkeep phase and then followed by the player phase. During the upkeep phase, players are going to be getting their workers returned back to their board, and then they're going to be drawing an event card, taking resources based on their income, and then drafting equipment from a shared pool. And the equipment are really neat in this game because these are what will give each player their own unique special abilities, and you're going to be getting 1 each round, and since there's 4 rounds, you're going to be ending the game with 4 different equipment cards. These are going to get placed into the center of your board, and at the end of the upkeep phase, you're going to be able to activate these, but you can also put workers on these in the player phase. And during the player phase, there's a couple options that players have. They can either place one of their workers, or they can flip one of the switches on their player board into the on position. When you're placing a worker, there's a few different options that you have. You can either place it onto one of the invention spaces out on your own personal player board in order to reactivate that invention, or if you don't have an invention there, you can still place it there and get that base ability that comes pre-printed on the board. And these will usually allow you to convert or gain a resource of a certain type. Or instead, you can put a worker out onto the main player board, and you have a few options when you're doing this. You can either put the worker onto one of the inventor hexes that are in the center of the board, and when you do that, that will allow you to use the ability on that hex, which usually allows you to convert resources into other resources. But if that is owned by another player, the resource that you're paying in order to convert that resource actually goes to the opposing player. But if you own it yourself, it just goes back into the pool, so you really want other players to use your inventor hexes. You can also place one of your workers to move up the ingenuity track, but you have to pay a cost to be able to do this, but this will be worth victory points depending on the order at the end of the game. You can also place a worker to gain an objective card, which will give you some sort of requirements that you'll try to meet before the end of the game in order to score those victory points. Or finally, you can place one of your workers into the inventor market in order to remove all those inventors and refresh that market with brand new cards. And if you choose that action, or you choose to just activate one of your switches instead of placing a worker, you'll be able to pay resources to gain an inventor from the market. You'll also gain the matching hex associated with that inventor, and it will just go into your hand. Or instead of paying to get an inventor hex, you can instead pay to gain a invention hex. And that will also just go into your hand, and if you want to play either of these, that will also require you to activate one of your switches, and when you do that, you'll be able to place these hexes out onto the main board. When you place one of your inventor hexes out on the board, you'll immediately gain its benefit, but you'll also be putting your colored tokens out on that hex to indicate that it's yours. But instead of an inventor, if you place one of the invention hexes out on the board, you're going to have to place it in such a way that it is adjacent to one of the inventors that has the skills in order to create that invention. And when you do that, you're going to gain its reward immediately, and you'll also advance in the industrial, economic, or academic track. And the reason that you're going to want to advance in these tracks is that you'll gain different benefits and victory points for passing certain milestones. And there's 2 ways that the game can end. Either you reach the end of the 4th round, or the entire board is full of hexes and there's no spaces left. At that point, players will add up their victory points, and the player with the most wins the game.